everyone. Welcome to Real Siblings. It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast that just ain't typical. I'm Donna, he's Eric, and we are the Real Siblings. We are both professional realtors with Keller Williams. And today we're going to talk a little more about lifestyle because it's already been a year and it's only the middle of March. Sigh.
Uh-huh.
So
The smallest violins, right?
I know. So my number crunching brother wanted to have a really deep discussion about water, and I just couldn't do it. So,
Ooh, there was a pun. A deep discussion about water. Sis, well played.
totally
Bravo.
unplanned. Anyway, clearly our conversations go in a lot of directions, and we work to provide our listeners with insights into our industry, better equipping them for their next real estate transaction. And so, Eric, today we're going to talk about schools. Why don't you tell our listeners why we opted to do this?
School days, school days. Now, this isn't our first discussion about school.
Right.
However, this one is sponsored. What would be the right words? Okay, I saw a comic book thing today. In our very first episode, back in 2022, we discussed an overview of Lindsay and how this thing was going to be structured and what we were going to do. And in that episode, you mentioned you went to Story Hour. And your youngest son, Caleb, who does our introduction before our voices come in, said, Mom, what the heck is Story Hour? So as I was putting together production schedule for this year, and we're not talking what we were talking because it's been a year and yeah, so on. We are addressing this from a Story Hour, pre-K, daycares, kindergarten, everything we do now with children before their first day of first grade.
Right. Yeah. And so then we looked up, you guys, just before we decided to start recording, we looked up kindergarten, and we both know enough German that we assumed it was from German, and it literally means children's garden, right? And Story Hour, I told Eric, I can't remember. Surely someone will watch this who remembers more about Story Hour than I do. But I would guess that it was akin to learning colors, learning letters, learning our name. And you know what, in Lindsay, there might have been music, right? We might have already had music of some sort.
Absolutely. And I never thought twice about the fact that when we started asking where did kindergarten come from, it's the children's garden. And being from a very, very German community, would not have thought anything about the fact that it was chosen as kindergarten. But here I am down in San Antonio, Hispanic world. I mean,
yeah,
Caucasians, whites, whatever terminology you want to, we're the minority.
Yeah.
Not by much, but we are. So why do we have German kindergarten in San Antonio?
But you also have some real German areas around San Antonio.
There are. And there was an area of South San Antonio. And when I say South San Antonio, Alamo is the center. South San Antonio at the time was 3 blocks away.
Okay.
But that part was originally German immigrants.
Ah.
But that still wasn't enough, in my mind, to influence, because you went to Story Hour, I went to kindergarten. We're only 7 years apart. We're in the same town. Something vernacular had to have happened.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
You say we can't do Story Hour anymore.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to go back and see what grade after me, where that changed. Like, did our brother Ken go to kindergarten? That was 4 years after me. And did it have something to do with the fact that how Lindsay was separate? Like Lindsay and Riley were kind of separate from the Fremont City schools. And how did that work? But beyond the name, I don't know if it was you or somebody else I was talking to the other day. I feel like I've become that person that shares we walked uphill both directions in the snow, to school.
And you did. If you officially count crossing over the railroad tracks.
That was the hit.
It was uphill and downhill. And when you walked back, you went uphill and downhill.
Okay, totally feel like I haven't lied now, all these, but that came from the discussion of kids getting driven and not riding buses and how society has changed. And we've also talked a little bit about where you lived when your girls were little, they're in San Antonio. And I think even when we were kids in Fremont, you could ride a bus whether you're going to the public school or the Catholic school, I think, right?
Yes, there were people who were going to St. Joe's in Lindsay who got on the exact same bus, got on the rig with Mrs. Miller.
Yeah, the rig. Yeah.
And got dropped off and walked from the junior high over to St. Joe's.
Right. And now I know there's buses. Caleb could probably chime in, and Jessica with this too, because I know they have buses in the city of Denver and they go all over because they're, I would say, akin to a magnet school, being that they're a language school, so kids can come from all over. But I don't know whether they have to take public transportation to get to a place where the school bus picks up, things like that.
So going back, do you remember, were you doing story hour in one of the classrooms in the school building?
I don't think so. I think we were in the extra little building out back.
Annex, which I had always been told that was for buses. So at what point did they convert and stop running heavy bus garage in Lindsay in order to put students into it?
We have to put this on our elementary school page.
We are going to get answers.
Yeah. So now we're in school, right? Whatever that is, first grade, second grade, third grade. We have the same teacher for all of our classes. In first grade, I had a first grade teacher. There was no go anywhere else. It was just one
right, correct.
One class. And again, I'm going to show my lack of knowledge. Is that the way it still is in elementary school?
It is to an extent.
Okay.
Elementary school is a classroom teacher for basics, reading, writing, arithmetics, history. They have specials. Okay. Specials include music, PE, and I think some of the schools now do some sort of, they don't do keyboarding, but they have screen time. Okay. That is part of and separate from using a screen in the classroom for English or something along those lines. Right. But yeah, when I have been sporting my white beard and going to schools,
yeah,
that's when I have to see students. They can only come out and see me during specials. And part of that is because schools we used to take the Iowa standard test just to see how we're doing. Hey, this doesn't affect anything. It's just a measure of, and blah, 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 effectiveness of the teachers, whatever curriculum course, whatever it was. But now kids actually take a test that ultimately leads towards graduation. And if you don't pass your junior year, you don't graduate and walk the stage your senior year. So it has an impact, and it has an impact of how your students perform on the STAR test, impacts the funding to the school.
Discussion right now.
What's that?
That could be a whole nother discussion right now.
Oh, absolutely. There's with everything that's in the news today while we're talking.
Yeah.
No question about it. But a certain amount of that funding is directed from the state level, not just the federal level. Right. Federal funds into states, state distribution, how you do it. Teachers underpaid, couldn't agree more for everything they do. We pay way too much for entertainment and not enough for education. Soapbox, I'll get off. But I think it's been almost 15 years now that San Antonio started a program called Pre-K and SA because they started to decide that kindergarten was not enough preparation. And part of that, the selling point on the program was there are affluent families who were sending their kids to daycare to private Montessori schools, something along those lines, preparing them for kindergarten. And there were less affluent people who couldn't afford it. And staying home, they weren't getting access to those basic tools that they needed to be on par with the other ones who had an advantage. So now, before you do kindergarten and even a pre-K class, because Jameson, when he was with us during the pandemic, and I was school administrator and then also starting to run him back to school when the doors opened again, could go for a half day as a pre-K class at the elementary school before the kindergarten class. This pre-K for SA program precedes that. So it's somewhere between toddler to official pre-K age to get into the elementary school, which prepares you for kindergarten.
So Eric, a couple of things that come to mind while you're talking about this. I showed homes the other day to a woman in her 50s who's looking to buy her first home. And her son came, and her son is a mechanic for one of the largest car dealers here. And he went to a technical a program at, I think, Pima Community College. I don't think it was at his high school, but it was a scholarship of sorts. And all I could think about was at high school, how the kids that went to Vanguard, versus staying at Ross. And now in our jobs, we are so short on people with the skill sets to do those things. And I remember when plastics was introduced over there and at Terra and stuff like that. But
well, that was Dustin Hoffman's fault, right?
Probably always.
The Graduate. What are you gonna do? Plastics.
Yeah, he's in trouble now. So we got to get that plastic out of here, right? So, but I found myself, this kid was there with his mom, looking over every single thing in the house that he knew how to handle, and he's 30. And I was like, do we have electricians? Do we have plumbers? And I was thinking about growing up in a farm community where, I know I've said it before, if not here, to half the world, the kids that grew up in the country on farms knew a lot of things. They knew how to drive tractors. They knew how to fix lights in the barn. They knew how, and some of the basic life skills that still are needed if you're a farmer, right? But that lend themselves into everything we do as realtors. I, on the other hand, graduated pretty darn high in a class, spoke some languages.
Thank you, Mr. Schreibold.
Don't know any, I can screw in a light bulb. I can do that, but I don't know anything about some of these other skill sets. And what's going on with that in the city of San Antonio?
There are a great deal of technical trade schools. Mm-hmm. Kids can opt out, and it's not just one or two things. It's kind of like what Vanguard has morphed into.
Okay.
And the fact that we had looked back at it and we said, hey, this is where Vanguard went. Mm-hmm. And it's way beyond, and it's technical stuff. So there are actually the last guy who did electrical work on my house is the son of somebody I worked with 30 years ago, moving the business from Irwindale, California to New Braunfels, Texas. And I came across this, and it's like, first time I talked to Nathan, the son, I said, how do you know Tony Tibbet? And I said, and how do you have a decade's experience? You're not even 30 years old yet.
Decades.
He started getting into his electrical apprenticeship in high school. So that by the time he graduated, he could already slide straight into a program to start getting more specific hands-on training outside of a classroom. And that is why he is now a licensed general electrician, and he's not even 30 years old, and he's running his own business with his dad.
It's awesome.
And they brought in 2 more people.
Yeah.
So there's no question. You and I short on the trades, and you probably more than Ken and I. Ken was much more woodworking, which is why he has all the tools.
Yep.
I was not totally
inept.
However, I did point out when the visitors from Lindsay and Fremont and Oak Harbor were in the other day that I had lunch with, I did note to them the fact that it's like, look, whatever skill I had when I was younger, now I just lay hands on it and it breaks. I said I could have a graveyard of mechanical equipment down the side of my hill because it's like, Eric touched it, I'm dead.
Don't be that person going polluting the hill down there.
I did it to a Dyson vacuum the other day.
You broke a Dyson vacuum?
And the Dyson vacuum ended up in the trash. And why did that happen? Because we previously had, this was our second Dyson. We had replaced the other one that we had for originally. That thing has its own separate transmission, a vacuum cleaner with a transmission. It's not just a switch you turn on. It had a transmission. It's proprietary. There's only 2 people in San Antonio who were licensed to repair the thing. So do you think that repair was cheap?
No.
And I just wasn't going to do it again. So yes, absolutely room for trades. I'm glad that Vanguard is so much more robust in that area.
So, Eric, we because I wanted to, I knew that I assumed you would mention that these guys had just been in town. So part of growing up in a small town was that in our school, I had about 26 kids in my class. I don't know how many you had, when you were there, but a couple of the people that visited either lived in Lindsay after we moved, or they went to church with us, but they weren't in our elementary school.
Correct.
But you also have worked with the brother of someone that you ran around with all through school. And I think that we talk about here about how we know people in a lot of places and we're part of a national network, but you and I also get our business from networking. And the fact that I laughed when you were meeting up with these guys, because I thought, Dan, I'm just going to call him out. I don't know if our brother Dan would have looked, cared, taken time, right? He's just different. Ken might have. But you and I are the ones that would do that. And you never, ever know what's going to come from that connection, like Mr. Ziebel.
Absolutely. And what was funny is I was sitting next to Rick. We took the picture that we took, and he said, I'm going to send this to Steve. And I said, Ziebold? So he's still well connected. And I don't think of Steve in context with that, because Steve went to Vanguard. I was at the main high school at Ross.
Okay, but wait.
We got together for band.
Ziebel. Are you talking Mylander or Ziebel?
No. I'm talking Steve Ziebold. Steve Mylander was with us.
Yeah.
Steve Ziebold, he sent the picture to, and then I sent a picture, and he goes, man, that's amazing. And of course, I used the opportunity to say, and we will be in town for the 3rd annual Lindsay Homecoming and Sunflower Festival.
Yeah. I think it's important.
And we'll visit our school.
I know that there are, my friend from Marcia, who went to high school here, the same school that Bill did. She met up with one of her friends recently. She has stayed friends. And I think that because of social media, I would say that I am connected to some of the high school kids, the band kids, things. But going from a school of roughly 20 students to a school for me that was between 500 and 600, like 580 people, that's like getting thrown into the U of A or at Michigan State. You have your small group that you're friends with, but from our little town, it's kind of across different generations and ages.
It is. And there is absolutely, Jeannie and I were talking the other day, that if you're traveling in the United States and you hear you see a Texas license plate, you wait by their car to say, hey, where are you from in Texas? I'm from Texas. if you're in another country and you hear an American accent, you go, yeah, you're from the States.
Yeah, we did that at the Louvre, gosh, back in '94 when I was there with mom and dad and stuff, and, Bernie, my friend Sandy's husband, Bernie would be like, people do that from New York. You don't talk to anybody when you're living in New York, walking down the street, but when you hear an accent in Europe, you go, hey, what borough are you from? Or
Yeah,
something.
where are you from?
Yeah,
That ain't a Belgian accent.
yeah, yeah.
And
So,
I'm teasing Belgium on that.
yeah, Belgium, teasing Belgium. So the schools today. This is what I know because I have no grandkids and I'm a realtor. I know that there's options and there's specialties at various schools. And I know what time they go because I try to avoid those places in the morning and after school because of all the cars that
The
are
parental
dropping.
traffic that's going to be there
Yes,
because, and that's another one of those things. When you lived in Lindsay, you were going to walk,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
There was never a question. It's like, oh, we got to get a bus.
yeah, yeah,
And nowadays, the closest ones to the school could walk. 90% of them will not be allowed to walk.
you think
And
that's
the
because
parents
of
have to
changing?
drive them, which creates that lineup of cars to get them. And then we started this with the pre-K, with story hour, with kindergarten. Those kids are too young. They're not supposed to be on a bus because they're considered to be too unmanageable.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
they're gonna get out of this.
you put a bunch of 4-year-olds on a bus with no seatbelts or anything else, and one bus driver,
Yeah,
chaos ensues.
and then again in sixth grade.
Right, but as we've progressed, as we've talked about this, while Jameson was with us, and I'm administering during COVID, they're trying to do a pre-K class on Zoom.
Oh, I remember you talking about that.
And then they would tell us what the kids needed to have available for the activity they were going to do on Zoom. So you need to have a cookie sheet, toy Legos, and shaving cream. And they had to go finding the Legos in the shaving cream on screen. And of course, that's all the mess in your house. I mean, that's what it was. It was like introduction to archaeology and finding bones. So we get this and get into, and it's digging and pulling out. So you've got shaving cream everywhere.
At least there's a reason. It could have been whipped cream, then they could have added.
Yeah, well, it also would have been a lot stickier and
Your face right down in it.
not to say that our big Coca-Cola puzzle
Oh, yeah.
that hangs on the wall.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We were doing some more deep cleaning the other day, and it's like, what is all over the glass? The only thing we can figure is what Jameson and one of his hit the plate, threw the spaghetti, and we had spaghetti sauce on glass that
You
we
couldn't
never
see
saw.
because of all the red in the Coca-Cola painting.
Right. We cleaned the wall, the yellow wall. We cleaned the white cabinets. We washed up the floor. But so how's that for too much information and full disclosure?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jameson would be thrilled to know that we are talking about these things.
Talking about him.
But I think, there's a young lady in our networking group right now that they're homeschooling 4 kids. And I don't know how they do it. And my nephew and niece, Gil's side of the family. Now their boys are teens. So, and mom and dad work from home. So it was like, okay to do that. But I don't know. I think about the friendships that we created. I think about the experiences we had. I'm not saying they're good, bad, or otherwise, or having a keyboard right now versus, oh no, wait, they should know how to write in cursive. That bugs me. So
I agree. I mean, and Brentley being the artist that he was,
Yeah.
we taught him cursive
Mm.
so that he could sign his name to his artwork when he was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
And he practiced cursive for his signature for that
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll have to get like, Caleb and Jessica to comment or something based on being in schools right now. And Christy with those boys are probably, those twins are probably what, 7, 6, like first grade?
No, I think they're past that already.
And they're in a tiny town.
And they are. And so what's the difference in a tiny town versus a Denver
Yeah, public school.
school?
Uh-huh.
You think about the fact that if we took anything to school, we took a lunchbox, right? Did you have a backpack when you were a kid?
No,
Now you've got to have a backpack, and for the pre-K kids, what you had in the backpack was a change of clothes when they mess things up, and you had to send them with a water bottle.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. That makes sense.
And because drinking fountains, we now know, are
germ infestation.
Right, germ infestation. So you have the water bottles, we save plastic, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But when Jenna was in school, by the time they got to middle school, they had 2 sets of books. We weren't to tablets and computers yet, but they had 2 sets of books. So that they had a set of books that they brought home the first day, and they had a set of books that they left at school, classroom books. So the classroom books were left there in the room. If you got your math book out, the same math book that you used every single day was there at the school. So you didn't have to load your backpack up and carry all those heavy books to and from school every day.
There's something to be said for that, although it's twice the cost of books.
But now I think it was our friends Julie and Robert, when their boys, Spencer and Bradley, had gotten to the point, their school was one of the first ones that implemented tablets. And New Braunfels, I was like, oh no, they don't have books, they have tablets now. And I was like, how does the school afford that? To provide every single one of the students a tablet?
That's why it's interesting to me to think about story hour and what we do, or think about Bible school or anything that we did where teachers ran off. Like I can picture an Easter egg that we would color, right? Or something like that around Easter. And at church, it would be a cross.
and you're doing the hand turkey, right? For Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
For Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm closer to the screen than you are. I was like, why can't I fit this in? It's like, oh, good. So it's been a year. It's March.
Yep.
We are actually the first day of spring.
Today? Yesterday.
20th, 21st is when spring equinox happens.
Caleb was born on Agriculture Day, and one of those twins is having a birthday today, right?
On Agriculture Day.
Was. Do you not know that? He got a little basket that delivered agriculture, had a little t-shirt. I think it's on one of the quilts I made him.
So it would have been one of those things where you got a little bowl of dirt and you did the first picture with him, like the little plant. Oh, they weren't doing that yet with those kids. That was the next generation down.
It was a cute little basket that probably had whatever was grown in Fremont's. Or sauerkraut.
So, story hour, pre-K for SA. I do have to say, I was listening to another podcast the other day because I know I listen to a lot more while I'm driving than you do.
Yeah.
But that's because I probably do a lot more miles. Aside from the fact that you went down to the casino the other day, I head into my office and that's 45 minutes to an hour I allow myself. Despite the fact that I like music and I listen to a lot of things, I listen to podcasts. And this was one where there was a person from the California area who was celebrating their 8th year in charge of this nonprofit, which is to help get Hispanic children into the tech world. And at 8 years, they were celebrating their 8th anniversary. And he talked about how the fact that when they launched this, some of the kids that came in, they would try to send them home with homework. And they're like, what homework? With the assumption that 8 years ago, everybody had a computer. And these kids were from households that didn't have a computer. Yet that same 8 years ago, plus, and actually, I mean, both of the boys are now Ariel's age. So those same ones that started with the tablets were getting tablets in a Texas school almost 20 years ago.
That's amazing to me. If I ever have grandchildren, I'm sure I'll be way more aware. I think about this every time I'm at a trivia.
Oh, absolutely.
You're at trivia and they talk about something classic, and classic is the year 2003. And I'm like,
okay, so we were at church the other day, and this young lady who we've been trying to help get a job new, and it's like, okay, why are we helping? Just because we've both been managers, we both hired before, we were helping tweak resume, do that sort of thing. But she was in a shirt that just said prayed up. And I saw it, and because of the way my weird mind works, I immediately heard Paula Abdul doing straight up. And she's like, who? And I, oh my gosh, Angie, you're 25. And so then out comes the phone, and she's typing it in, and she goes, oh yeah, I think I remember this on a school bus.
like being in an elevator for us.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there, just change the lyrics a little bit, and you go, prayed up, I'm ready for the church.
Before we end this, I also was thinking, because you mentioned Ariel, the fact that she is living in Portugal and working with people all over the world because of technology. Whether that was part, because she went to college, right? So whether this was part of what she did in high school, again, I don't know exactly what was happening 8 years ago, however many years ago it might have been, in the schools, but that is absolutely nothing we could have done.
Well, she was at camp here with us in Texas one time when her best friend Erin had saved up all of her babysitting money and went out and bought an iPhone.
Wow. Okay.
So,
and they're how old? Are they 24, 25?
No, they're going to be 28, 29.
Okay. So yeah, I've lost track. All right. So then it's been a long time then since she was in school. Anyway, it just makes me think about the abilities, even this that we are doing.
Right.
There was
super
radio,
high quality audio and video that we produce.
Yeah. High quality stuff, because we got this cool microphone that I sometimes remember. All right. Well, we talked a little bit about school. We haven't talked for a while. I think it's important for our listeners to know that we didn't do 2 episodes this month, and that was sort of the whole, it's been a year already, but I think you all know that
losing 6 weeks at the beginning of the year, which it really was the middle of February before I started to feel recovered. And if we did a 5K walk the other day, and one of the people who was there at the 5K walk is a doctor, and he's doing research, and he knew I had been sick, but it wasn't until he heard me audibly say the infectious disease doctor came in and said, I have necrotizing Staph aureus, which has moved from my lungs to my blood, that his head whipped around. He was about 10 or 15 foot. He's like, what? That's bad.
Right. And for those of you, if this is the first time you ever watch or listen to anything we do, I do this video, I edit nothing, and then I send the audio to Eric, and he has his voice and my voice, and he puts them together, and he adds what our children and grandkids have recorded. And that's what becomes the podcast that goes out to Spotify and everywhere else. So we're just not caught up. And this month you're getting 1 episode. This is it. I know, but I just want people to know we haven't stopped altogether. So that was.
We are not pod fading is the technical term.
Pod fading?
Pod fade.
Oh, okay.
Because the number of podcasts that make it through, it's a typical Pareto principle thing. People start and go, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, but this is what I'm going to do. I got a great idea. And they get to episode 7 or 8 and they're gone.
Yeah.
So surviving that, 80% of those podcasts, the podcasts that exist, don't make it past 8 episodes. So we're part of the 20%, and now we're getting even more elite with our consistency in publishing and consistency in listens, downloads, that sort of thing. We are top 5% because of the number of listens we get within the first 7 days. So awesome. Thank you for listening. That's cool.
Take us out, brother.
Take us out. Hey. We want to thank everybody for joining us today and listening to this episode of Real Siblings. It ain't easy. We do not take it for granted that you choose to spend some time with us. Normally twice a month, not today. As we close, please remember that we're both professional real estate agents. Donna's in Tucson. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. We can help you out locally in our cities and in our regions. And if not, we can refer you to a terrific agent somewhere in the United States or around the world. Where do I want to go from there? All right. I'm Eric.
Donna.
And we are Real Siblings.
That was quite the ending, brother.